Welcome, chess fans. I'm going to do some game reviews from the most recent over-the-board tournament that I played this last weekend. And it was a 5-round event. It was the Missouri Clash Championship, and I decided to play in the open section. I could have played in the Class A section, and maybe I should have, because it turns out there were so few players there that they combined the two sections for pairings. So I wasn't actually playing for prizes in the Class A, I was playing for prizes in the open. And I did this because I was hoping to get much stronger pairings, but it turned out a pretty weak turnout. So I got relatively lower rated players compared to what I was hoping. Everyone I played was basically at my rating instead of playing up. So everyone that played was between 1850 and 2000, and I was really hoping to play people who were over 2000. Anyway, I got paired with the first game. There was 0 time to prep because the pairings came out just a few minutes before, and I got the black pieces. And so we get d4, d5, and I'm already sort of happy. And we get my, I'm going to go for the Slav setup, and I play this triangle kind of opening from the ChessGoals repertoire, as I'm sure you guys are aware. And here we get g3, which is a Catalan attempt. And I'm sitting here at the board, and all of a sudden, I just can't remember what I'm supposed to play. I know now I take this pawn, but for some reason I didn't want to do this. I was thinking that like something like this would happen, and they would come, and after I played here, I was worried that this bishop will come, and he can just capture this pawn, and I thought that there would be problems, but this is just ridiculous. I just play here, and okay, fine. If he tries to make like the scary move, I can just defend this pawn this way, and then move the knight out, or even just a6. Also moving the queen defended so that if they capture, if it captures here, I can just take back and the bishop's protected. And this is a clean way to play. I have an extra pawn. It's going to be difficult for black to, for white to get his pawn back, and we have a nice game. Instead, since I was super worried about this diagonal, I didn't take the pawn. I instead played knight f6, and next thing I know, I'm on my own. I just started learning this repertoire like maybe a year ago, and I don't have a lot of experience in it, and I've yet to face this g3 thing over the board. I've got it in blitz, and all of these Catalan things can come in so many different move orders. Sometimes this knight's out first, sometimes they don't play the c-pawn first, sometimes they immediately go for the bishop, and all of the kind of setups and the nuances, I don't quite have them figured out yet. But my big takeaway here is that in this situation, when there is no bishop yet on this diagonal, we can capture the pawn because we're going to have time to push our b pawn and come here. So this is kind of my takeaway of what I'm trying to learn from the opening here. So knight f6 happens, perfectly normal. There's nothing really particularly wrong with this. Bishop to b2, and I play bishop to e7. White is at some point going to play e4, and I didn't want the bishop on d6 because I didn't want to have to worry about any sort of threats here. So castles, and knight c3. And again, everything is just kind of unfolding normally. But I have a big problem, and it's that I don't really know what I'm going to end up doing with this bishop because it's blocked in. So I already kind of established this idea that I was going to capture here and go for e5 and liberate my bishop. Of course, I can try to go for c5, but I didn't really like that because I wanted this pawn to remain on c6. And I knew that I wanted to wait. I thought I needed to wait for this knight to come out before I captured this pawn. Otherwise, not a great example, but if I had, say, captured here, white can potentially come here and go here. And in this way, it doesn't quite make sense in this specific position, because I can just play b5 because I have the option to play bishop b7 to block it in. But for example, I was worried about something like this, and again, I can't really play. I mean, I can, but after takes, we potentially run into some problems. But I suppose not here because I just have this rook move. But anyway, you see my point. I didn't want a knight on c4, which is going to be hilarious because capturing is what I played, and instead of, castling is what I played, and after knight c3 I did take, and he immediately just plays knight to a5. And again, I'm going to continue to struggle because this pawn's going to grab back. I really can't play b5 now. That's just a good way to hang a pawn immediately and maybe even lose a rook in the process. If I was going to do anything, I definitely should have played this knight to d7 first and then capture this pawn so that there is no knight to e5, and white is going to have to spend quite a bit of time getting their pawn back, and in that time I can probably generate e5 and get my bishop out for some play. So something like this would have happened. Knight to d7, develops the bishop out, say to f4, and now I can just capture this pawn, and something like e4 happens, and I can play b5, and I'm going to keep this pawn quite nicely. Because, of course, if knight d5 is played, well, I can just capture it, and if he takes back with here, well, no problem. I can actually just put this knight on d5, and I'm quite happy. I'm just up a clean pawn and feeling quite good. But instead, I took here immediately after this knight moved, and this is kind of a problem that I have a lot in my games. I feel like I'm kind of a lazy chess player, because I try to play a lot on like what I remember from intuition, and I don't do a lot of calculating over the board, and I didn't actually even consider this move. I just thought that in the time it was going to take him to get this pawn back, I would do something. But it turns out he can just play knight e5, and now I play knight e7, and he captures. And this knight is actually really well placed. It's controlling these d6 and e5 squares. It's not in the way of the bishop anymore, and it's just a pain in the butt. Probably the best thing that I should do is just play knight to b6, just trying to challenge this knight. And if the knight comes back here, well, I'm going to come back too, and I'm not going to let this knight sit on c5. White is better, and so they don't really want to draw, and they have to move the knight someplace else. So they're going to take it, which I'm happy with, because, I have no space and it would be nice to get rid of a few pieces, or they have to go back and do something sort of awkward with the knight, when I can play like queen c7, and I'm going to play e5 very shortly. So instead of this, I played rook to e8. And my idea is I'm going to move the bishop, I'm going to play e5, and I liked my knight here because I thought it was controlling this. So I felt like I had a plan, but again, this is slow, and it's difficult, and it's kind of a pain. So he played a4, and again, I still have this knight b6 idea, which I should definitely go for. Just trying to swap off these two knights. It's obvious that the knight on c4 is better than my knight on d7, but I'm just fixated with this idea of trying to play e5. So first I play here, because I was worried that this would happen. This pawn would advance and force this b pawn to move, when then my c6 pawn's pretty soft. So I played a4, and I was also happy because I was like, woohoo, there's a b5 square, I can take advantage of that. Queen to b3 was played. I have to be honest, I didn't quite understand the point of this move. It turns out it's the best move, and it's quite strong. It frees the d1 square, and it also, after I play e5, perhaps this f7 can be a little bit soft, and it also now prevents my idea. So I played knight to d5, and my idea is I'm just going to stick a knight on b4. It's a beautiful looking square. I thought this would be a great place for it. And perhaps later I might bring the knight here, I might bring the bishop here. All kinds of interesting things can happen. Okay, not really interesting things at all. In fact, I'm still struggling to maneuver my pieces, and really the idea behind knight d5 really ought to be to go back to this b6 plan, or even playing this knight to b6, so after e5 I can just take it. So rook to d1 was played, and I went ahead with my plan. Again, not exchanging this pawn, or this knight, like I really ought to, and then e4 is played. So I played bishop to f8, and again, my idea is just to play e5. But we have this uncomfortable tension against the d8 pawn, and I'm still really struggling. Bishop e3 was played, and this is my moment to play e5. I should do it right now. And the idea is that if he captures, which probably not going to do, I can play queen to e7 now, and I'm going to pick this pawn back up. I mean, f4 is just not a good move. I can go to c5, and I'm putting pressure here. I can maybe stick a knight here. I'm hitting the queen. The queen doesn't have a lot of great places to go back to, so, for example, kind of forced to come here. But then I have knight e2, and I'm just winning material. So this f4 move isn't a thing. Black needs to do something against this move. So, for example, if they just took it, well, that's no good, because I can play with check, and king to h1 would happen, and then I just have bishop to e6, and this knight is gonna go away. It's pinned to the queen. I'm gonna win material. So this is what I should have done. Instead, I somehow didn't see any of this, and before e5, I thought I had to get this queen off of the diagonal so I can retake back with a knight, so I played queen here. This turns out to be a bit slow, and allows white a maneuver that they thankfully didn't go for. White had this e5 move. I kind of get why they didn't play it, because they think they have this backwards pawn, but it does open up this bishop. But more importantly, white has this idea of going knight to e4, and then planting some knight on d6. He's got two to choose from, and this would just be incredibly cramping, just awful. But instead, white chose to play rook to d2. And still going for this d5 break, which makes sense. And so now I play e5, but it's just too late. White's gonna get too much play. Plays d5, and my original intention was to go here with the knight, but I was too worried that in some variation after the queen moves, that e6 would come, and I would lose this knight. So then I thought, okay, if I'm going to do that, I need to move this queen out of the way. So I moved the queen back to d8, which is just crazy, because it puts it back in line with this rook. And, better probably would have been come out to f6, but this is already a horrifically difficult position. I don't have any good moves. I have no active play. Look at these garbled set of pieces here versus all of these pieces. Maybe this one is lacking. Maybe the bishop is lacking something to do, but it's going to come out to h3. A little bit of foreshadowing for what's to come. So I played queen to d8. My idea was that I would just come over here to c7 or something like that, and then play my knight out to c5. So white just responds nicely. It goes here, here, and I had seen this and expected this, and I thought this was all okay. I like this pawn on c6. I know it's on an open file, but it's still preventing this knight from moving, and I thought I'll get the rook to b8, and maybe I'll get some counterplay against this guy. And I thought, just now, finally, I'm maybe getting some open places for my pieces, because this bishop can come out either of these directions, and for a brief moment, I started to feel good. But it turns out this is just garbage. This knight b6 comes, taking advantage of the pinned queen that I just put back. So I've got to move the rook, and he just grabs it, grabs here, and then brings the queen back. And I just don't have enough ways to protect this bishop. I play here, but then the bishop just comes to h3, and it's all over. There's nothing I can do. It seems like I should be able to play here and then block this check by this move. And this would be great. This would be great, except for white doesn't play bishop g5. White plays this way. And now I'm in horrendous trouble, because this rook is going to be lost, and then I'm going to lose the bishop. So instead, I played one more sort of desperation move. I played knight d5, just hoping that perhaps knight takes knight would get played. But, that's not going to happen. If knight takes knight, then I can take this bishop, and, I'm in a survivable position again. But instead, he just played here, and I immediately resigned. The point is that I can't grab here because this check, or sorry, not check, but this discovery hits my rook, hits my queen, and I've got nothing useful. If I could somehow play, it's crazy, somehow I could put the queen here and give up the rook for a mate, but there's just no option for this, and I'm going down. The only thing I could have done to potentially try to play on would be to play here, but then just bishop takes, and yeah, I'm down to exchange. I now have awful pawn structure. I have all of these weak pawns, and yeah, this is, there's nothing to play for here. This is just terrible. So yeah, a pretty terrible first game. Played against this little kid. First time facing the Catalan over the board, and yeah, forget my theory, which is nice. So going back, we take here, and yeah, I maybe have a game. I need to to just remember these lines, learn these nuances, and but not a great start to this event. He was rated about 1860 or so, and this game honestly really sets the tone for the whole event. I frankly didn't play well, didn't feel good about my play, and as I do these recaps, you guys are going to see a lot more games that kind of look like this one, if we're totally honest. Anyhow, thanks for watching, and I'll show you the next one in a bit. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.